Oh man, that was a great movement.
Which movement?
The Black is Beautiful movement in the 1960s. You know, culturally, it had an explosive impact on black people. The civil rights movement most certainly dealt with civil rights, but culturally, it was this notion of black is beautiful, which was not an issue. I mean, did not come up as an issue in the earlier, stages of the civil rights movement. People weren't raising these issues. You know, for example, if you looked at various black newspapers, Ebony, magazine or Jet magazine, they always had ads for bleaching cream, to lighten your skin. And so there was this emphasis on becoming as light as you can or as white as you can. You see, the civil rights movement didn't address that. And so when various people started raising issues about these cultural issues, about black is beautiful, all of a sudden you had a whole new dynamic taking place. People started wearing afros. I had a big afro, you see. Some of us started wearing African dashikis, started giving our kids, African names. And it had an impact on the self-image of black folk. I think you might have seen the film Black Panther. What comes across in that film, as you very well know, is that you got these African people, African features, dark folk, you see, who are very much in the limelight, you see. And that's sort of a reflection of what was going on, during this period of time.
The name of the song that James Brown used to sing is "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," which is, I think, an anthem of that era. Also, of course, during that era, you didn't see black women of dark skin on television or movies or in commercials. This was a real challenge to us, raising a dark-skinned daughter. My husband actually has a couple of poems that address this that we can show you later. But this was a deeply entrenched manifestation of self-hate. The self-hate stemmed from that period when those who were mulattoes, which was probably a status that was gained by rape, were privileged over those of us who were so-called pure-blooded Africans. And this particular dysfunction, this dysfunctional view of color and color stratification dated back to slavery times and to the times when basically the favored children of the plantation owners were the ones that they had sired. And so those were the children that were given schooling or that were given money or land. And everybody else was not. I was just reading my father's master's thesis from 1947, and he has a section on this. He was a dark-skinned man who grew up in South Carolina, and a good chunk of his master's thesis is about the caste system among African Americans that was caused by socioeconomic status and by skin color.
Abdu'l-Baha says that Baha'u'llah once referred to blacks as a pupil of the eye, reflecting, I don't have the whole quote, reflecting,
through which the light of
the spirit
shineth
through. And that was, if you were a black Bahai involved in the Black and Beautiful movement and the Civil Rights movement, you could, that was such a wonderful statement, because you could share that with other blacks in the movement, tell them this is what the prophet, founder of the Baha'i Faith, said about black people. And so that meant a lot. That gave you a lot of, credibility among people in the movement. And of course, it gave you a great sense of well-being. That legitimized the things that we were talking about. That legitimized having our afros and talking about African history and black is beautiful. No one could call us racist, if we said, look, Baha'u'llah talked about black as the pupil of the eye. He said that meant that meant a lot.
The interesting thing about the analogy that Baha'u'llah draws between the pupil of the eye and people of African descent is that he backed it up with stories. So he also talked about servants of the Holy Family that had exhibited great character, great strength of integrity. Abdu'l-Baha, who was Baha'u'llah's son, who says that my father used to say, and then he would tell us what Baha'u'llah said about this analogy, the pupil of the eye. And then Abdu'l-Baha would also back this up with not only stories, but also actions. So we have many stories about that. And one of our family's favorites is, for example, when he was visiting in 1912, he with a group of street children, of whom only one was a dark-skinned boy. He brought them into the room that he was staying, and then he essentially held up a piece of dark chocolate candy, and he put it against this little boy's face with the direct implication that this little boy was like sweet chocolate. And that was so unusual. This was in 1912. When we were still not able to sit down in public at a restaurant that was frequented by whites. And here was Abdu'l-Baha equating this little black boy to a piece of chocolate.